At my brother's wedding, his fiancée mocked me as a sad single mom. Mom laughed, guests joined. But my 8-year-old stood, exposed the bride's secret, and the truth shattered everything. Could you ever imagine the person you trusted most, your own brother, standing by as your mother publicly shamed you at his wedding? Because that's exactly what happened to me. I thought that day was going to be the most humiliating of my life, until my innocent 8-year-old son, Noah, dropped a bombshell that exposed the bride's darkest secret, right there in front of everyone. What the hell happened next? You won't believe it. I'm Samantha Wilson, 32, and being a single mom to Noah was never the plan, but it became the most rewarding journey I never expected. 5 years ago, I launched my interior design business, finally finding a rhythm balancing work with raising my energetic, intuitive little boy. We built our cozy life from scratch in a 2-bedroom apartment, complete with a small garden where Noah grows sunflowers taller than himself. My ex-husband, Walter, walked out when I was 7 months pregnant, claiming he wasn't ready. Good riddance, honestly. Growing up just 2 years apart, my brother Jeffrey and I were practically inseparable. We built epic blanket forts that our mom, Diana, grudgingly allowed to stay up for days. We had secret languages that drove our dad, Harold, absolutely crazy. Jeffrey taught me to ride a bike, running alongside me until I found my balance. When I broke my arm at 10, he carried me half a mile home on his back. He was my rock. But there was always this undercurrent in our family dynamic. Jeffrey was the golden child, the star student, always bringing home perfect report cards and trophies. I was creative, did well enough, but never quite matched his achievements in our parents' eyes. They never missed his football games, but my art shows? Often, it was just Jeffrey there, offering honest critiques and unwavering support. "You've got the real talent, Sammy," he'd tell me, using the nickname only he was allowed. "They just don't get it yet." After college, Jeffrey went to law school, becoming a corporate attorney at a prestigious firm. I pursued design. When Noah came along and Walter disappeared, Jeffrey was my rock. He helped me move into my first single-mom apartment, assembled Noah's crib, even took night shifts with the colicky newborn so I could get some sleep. "That's what siblings are for," he'd say, rocking Noah at 3 a.m. "We're a team. Always have been." Then, 18 months ago, everything changed. Jeffrey brought Vanessa to Sunday dinner. She was stunning, tall, blonde, a dazzling smile, impeccable style. Her family owned a huge real estate development company, and she worked in their marketing. My mom, Diana, was immediately charmed by Vanessa's stories of charity galas and Maldives vacations. But I noticed something immediately. Vanessa's smile, the way she spoke, it shifted when she addressed me versus my parents. With Diana and Harold, she was animated, engaging, complimenting Mom's decor, asking Dad about golf. When I mentioned my design business, she gave a polite nod, then immediately steered the conversation back to Jeffrey's latest court victory. "Interior design must be such a fun little hobby," she commented later, helping my mom clear dishes. "Hobby." I wanted to scream. It's nice you can do that while raising Noah. Jeffrey didn't seem to catch the subtle dismissal, but I saw the flash of judgment in her eyes when Noah accidentally spilled his juice, and I calmly cleaned it up instead of scolding him. "Your son seems a bit undisciplined," she whispered to me later in the kitchen. "Children need firm boundaries, you know." My blood ran cold. Despite these blaring red flags, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was nervous. Maybe her privileged upbringing made it hard for her to relate to my single mom struggles. I invited her to lunch, just us, hoping to build a connection. She always had an excuse: work, hair appointments, charity committees. Noah, with his open heart, was so excited about having a new aunt. He made Vanessa a hand-drawn card, "Welcome to our family," in his best second-grade handwriting. When he presented it at another family dinner, she took it with 2 fingers, like it was contaminated, and placed it aside without even opening it. I watched his little face fall, and something hard and cold settled in my heart against this woman who couldn't spare a moment of genuine kindness for an innocent child. "Why doesn't Aunt Vanessa like my drawings?" Noah asked on the drive home. "Some grown-ups just don't understand how special children's art is." I choked out, fighting back tears. "But your drawings belong in museums." I tried sharing my concerns with Jeffrey, but he was already completely under Vanessa's spell. "You're just not giving her a chance, Sam," he said, his voice uncharacteristically cold. "Vanessa comes from a different world. She's trying her best." I wasn't convinced. As their relationship progressed, I watched my brother slowly transform from the supportive, kind man I'd known all my life into someone who prioritized Vanessa's feelings and opinions above all else, even his own family. Jeffrey proposed to Vanessa after only 6 months of dating, announcing it at our parents' anniversary dinner. He presented her with a diamond ring that must have cost 3 months of his salary. My mom squealed with delight, Dad clapped Jeffrey on the back, and I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Noah, bless his heart, innocently asked if this meant Vanessa would come to his school play next month. Her tight smile and vague "we'll see" spoke volumes. The engagement party was at the country club, where Vanessa's family were long-standing members. I blew 2 weeks of my grocery budget on a new dress, determined to fit in with the crowd of socialites. Noah wore his first little suit, his hair slicked down with water because we couldn't afford fancy styling products. All evening, I was introduced as Jeffrey's sister, without my name or profession. When a few guests learned I was an interior designer, they immediately asked for cards, only for Vanessa to swoop in. "Samantha just does small residential projects," she clarified, her tone making it sound like I decorated dollhouses, not actual homes. "My friend Alessandra does the most amazing commercial spaces. You should really talk to her." The wedding planning started immediately. 6 months away. Vanessa hired a high-end planner who looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language when I suggested cost-saving alternatives for the flowers. "We're not on a budget," Vanessa stated flatly. "Jeffrey and I want the best of everything." I noticed she said Jeffrey and I, but the decisions were all hers. My brother, once so opinionated, now deferred to her on everything. Traditionally, siblings were always part of the wedding party. When I casually asked Jeffrey who his groomsman would be, he looked uncomfortable. "About that, Sam. Vanessa thinks it would be better if you focused on helping with Noah during the wedding. She's having her sorority sisters as bridesmaids, and it would be uneven to have you stand up too." I swallowed hard, nodding, pretending it didn't feel like a physical slap. Later that night, I cried. In my bathroom, the shower running loud, so Noah wouldn't hear me. The bridal shower was another exercise in humiliation. Vanessa's mother rented a private room at an exclusive women's club. My mom was at the head table, while I was placed at a distant table with cousins I barely knew. During gift opening, Vanessa gushed over every present until she reached mine, a handcrafted photo album I'd spent weeks making. "Oh, how crafty," she said with a tight smile, setting it aside for the next gift, an expensive crystal vase that elicited genuine excitement. As if the slight wasn't enough, while mingling later, Vanessa accidentally bumped into me, spilling red wine down the front of my cream-colored dress, the only nice outfit I had for these events. "Oh no, what a shame," she said, dabbing ineffectually. "Red wine is impossible to get out. You should go home and change." Her eyes told a different, colder story than her words. With each passing week, Jeffrey became more distant. Our weekly coffee meetups were canceled more often than not. He stopped dropping by to play with Noah, who kept asking when Uncle Jeffrey was coming over. My parents, completely absorbed in the excitement of their son marrying into such a good family, noticed nothing amiss. 2 weeks before the wedding, Noah spent hours making a special drawing for the couple, a picture of all of us together as a family. He carefully colored Jeffrey in his lawyer suit, Vanessa in a princess dress, himself in his favorite dinosaur t-shirt, and me holding hands with everyone. "This is so we remember we're all family now," he explained, his face serious. I helped him frame it. When we gave it to Vanessa at the rehearsal dinner, she said, "How sweet," then placed it under the table. Later, when she thought no one was watching, I saw her toss it into a decorative trash bin. My heart clenched. I retrieved it, kept it in my car, unsure whether to tell Noah the truth. That night, I seriously considered not attending at all. But despite everything, I loved my brother, and I knew my absence would create a family rift that might never heal. So I decided to go, to hold my head high and be there for Jeffrey, even if he couldn't see how his fiancée was isolating him from the people who truly loved him. "We'll just go for the ceremony, and maybe a little of the reception. I told Noah as I tucked him in. Uncle Jeffrey will be happy we came, and that's what matters. And I'll get to see if Vanessa likes my other drawing, Noah said sleepily, referring to another artwork he'd made specially for the wedding day. I stroked his hair, marveling at his persistent optimism in the face of so much rejection. You have the biggest heart, I whispered, praying Vanessa wouldn't crush it again. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day that seemed to mock my inner turmoil. Noah burst into my room at 6 a.m., excited about wearing his fancy clothes and riding in a limousine for the first time, a luxury I'd splurged on. Do you think Aunt Vanessa will let me throw flower petals? He asked. The flower kids have already been chosen, sweetie, I explained gently. But you get to be my special date, and that's even better. I wore a forest green dress I'd found on clearance and altered myself, modest, flattering, chosen specifically not to draw attention away from the bride. The ceremony was at St. Catherine's Cathedral, an imposing stone church with a 2-year waiting list. Vanessa's father had made a substantial donation to secure a last-minute booking. We arrived an hour early. Noah clutched his new drawing, carefully protected in a folder. Where do we put the presents? He asked an usher. Gifts go to the reception venue, the man replied, barely glancing at us. Family members? I nodded. Right side of the church, please. We made our way inside. I was surprised to find most of the front pews already reserved with Family of the Bride signs. A young woman with a clipboard approached. You must be Samantha. You and your son are in row 12. Row 12? I repeated, confused. But I'm the groom's sister. She gave me a sympathetic look. Those are the seating assignments I was given. The front rows are for parents, grandparents, and, she hesitated, special family members. The distinction stung, a raw wound. I nodded and led Noah to our assigned seats, so far back we'd barely see the ceremony. As we settled in, Vanessa's extended family began to arrive, cousins, great aunts, even distant family friends, all seated ahead of us. My parents, Diana and Harold, arrived, immediately escorted to the front row. My mother, in an expensive new outfit, didn't even look around for me. They were fully absorbed in their role as parents of the groom, accepting congratulations, looking utterly proud. The ceremony was objectively beautiful. The church glowed with candlelight, a string quartet played, and when Jeffrey took his place at the altar, he looked happier than I'd seen him in months. I felt a pang of conflicted emotions, joy for his happiness, sadness at our growing distance, and a lingering worry about the woman he was choosing. Vanessa made her entrance on her father's arm, her dress a custom-made confection that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. Even from our distant seats, I could see she was radiant, and the genuine love on my brother's face as he watched her approach brought tears to my eyes. Noah leaned against me during the vows, his small hand in mine, occasionally whispering questions. As they were pronounced husband and wife, he squeezed my fingers. Now she's really our family, right, Mom? That's right, I whispered back, hoping that somehow, being officially family might soften Vanessa's heart toward us. The receiving line quickly dashed those hopes. When we finally reached the newlyweds, Jeffrey gave me a quick, distracted hug before being pulled away by Vanessa's mother for photos. Vanessa offered a cool cheek for me to air a kiss. Congratulations, I said warmly, determined to start fresh. The ceremony was beautiful. Thanks for coming, she replied, her eyes already moving to the guests behind us. She didn't acknowledge Noah at all, even as he tried to hand her his drawing. I made this for you, he said, his voice small but determined. Put it with the other gifts, sweetie, she said without looking at it. We have to take photos now. I guided a disappointed Noah away, tucking his drawing back into its folder. We'll give it to her later at a better time, I promised, though I wasn't sure such a time would ever come. The reception was at the Belmont, the city's most exclusive hotel. The ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland, despite it being June, with crystal decorations, white flowers, and actual ice sculptures on every table. The cocktail hour was in full swing, servers circulating with champagne and elaborate hors d'oeuvres. I accepted a glass of champagne, needing the liquid courage. Noah was immediately bored, so I found him a seat by a window where he could watch the boats on the river. As I tried to mingle, I couldn't help but notice how Vanessa's friends regarded me with curious, sometimes pitying looks. I caught snippets of conversation that stopped abruptly when I approached, raising the boy all alone. Couldn't Jeffrey have found someone from our circle? Heard she lives in that developing area near the old factory. At one point, I escaped to the restroom for a moment of peace, only to hear Vanessa's voice from one of the stalls, speaking to her maid of honor. Jeffrey's family is just so provincial, especially his sister. Did you see that off-the-rack dress? And that child of hers has clearly never been taught proper behavior. I slipped out before they emerged, my cheeks burning with shame and a simmering rage. When I returned to the main room, my mother intercepted me, her expression a mix of criticism and concern. "Samantha, I wish you'd made more effort with your appearance today. Vanessa's friends are all so elegantly dressed." "I'm wearing my best, Mom," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Diana sighed, patting my arm condescendingly. "Well, try harder with Vanessa, please. She's family now, and Jeffrey really wants you two to get along. Maybe don't mention your situation so much. It makes people uncomfortable. My situation. My life as a single mother that I'd built from the ground up, that I was proud of despite its challenges. I'll do my best." I managed, though inside I was screaming that I'd been trying all along, only to be consistently rejected. As guests moved into the dining area, I found Noah and straightened his little tie, grateful for his innocent presence that kept me anchored. "Are you having fun, Mom?" he asked, seeing straight through my fake smile. "It's a very fancy party," I deflected. "Let's go find our table." I should have been prepared for another slight, but it still hurt when we discovered we were seated at the very back of the room, at a table with distant acquaintances and Jeffrey's colleagues from the office mail room. From our position, we could barely see the head table where my brother, Vanessa, and both sets of parents sat beneath a canopy of twinkling lights. Noah looked around at our table mates, all adults, all strangers, then back at me with questioning eyes. "It's okay," I assured him, though we both knew it wasn't. "We won't stay too late." As the salads were served, I noticed Noah watching the head table intently, his young eyes missing nothing. I wondered what he was thinking, how he was processing this clear message that we were outsiders in what should have been our own family celebration. I squeezed his hand under the table, a silent promise that no matter what, he and I were a team. What I didn't realize was that my sensitive, observant little boy was absorbing far more than I imagined, and that before the night was over his innocent perspective would change everything. Dinner progressed with the usual wedding reception rhythms. The father of the bride spoke at length about Vanessa's accomplishments and how fortunate Jeffrey was to be joining their family. He emphasized fortunate while looking directly at my brother, a not-so-subtle reminder of the financial disparity. "And we've already secured Jeffrey a position at my firm's legal department," he announced to murmurs of approval. "No more of that public defender nonsense." I frowned, knowing how passionate Jeffrey had been about his pro bono work. Now it was dismissed as nonsense, without a word of protest from my brother. The best man gave a charming toast. Jeffrey's speech was brief but sincere. Throughout it all, I kept waiting for him to acknowledge our family, not just our parents, but the shared history and bonds that had shaped us both. He never did. As coffee and dessert were served, I thought perhaps the worst was over. Noah was starting to fidget, clearly tired, and I was contemplating making our exit before the dancing began. That's when Vanessa, slightly flushed from champagne, took the microphone from the DJ for what appeared to be an unplanned speech. "I just want to thank everyone who made this perfect day possible," she began, her voice carrying across the now quiet ballroom. "My amazing parents who gave me everything a girl could dream of." She blew them a kiss. "Jeffrey's parents who raised such a wonderful man." A nod to Diana and Harold. "And especially my gorgeous bridesmaids who've been with me through everything." She paused, took another sip of champagne, and I sensed a shift in her demeanor, a slight edge entering her voice. "You know, when I first met Jeffrey, I wondered about his background. He was so accomplished, so sophisticated. I couldn't understand certain elements of his family situation. My stomach tightened as her gaze drifted in my direction, particularly his sister's circumstances. I mean, here's Jeffrey, this brilliant attorney, and then there's his sister, just a pathetic single mom who couldn't keep a man. Talk about family contrasts." A shocked silence fell over the room. I felt the blood drain from my face as every eye turned toward me. Noah looked up, confused by the sudden tension. Then, to my horror, my own mother laughed, a bright, social laugh that cut through the silence like a knife. "Oh, Vanessa," Diana called out. "You're too much, but you're not wrong. Samantha always was our challenging child. She's like a discount model with a scratched label. Almost right, but not quite what you'd want on display." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the guests, people unsure whether they should be amused or appalled. But following the mother of the groom's lead, Vanessa smirked, emboldened by Diana's approval. "I just believe children deserve a proper family," she continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "Not to be raised by someone who clearly has such poor judgment in both men and life choices." More laughter, louder this time. I sat frozen, humiliation burning through me like acid. My hands shook so badly I had to clench them in my lap. I couldn't look at Noah. Couldn't bear to see his reaction to this public dissection of our family. Jeffrey, to his credit, looked uncomfortable, whispering something to Vanessa that she waved off with another laugh. "Oh, don't worry. Everyone knows it's true. I'm just saying what everyone thinks. I should have gotten up then. Should have taken Noah and walked out with whatever dignity I could salvage. But shock had paralyzed me, pinning me to my chair as tears threatened to spill. This was my brother's wedding. How had it turned into my public shaming? The DJ, sensing disaster, tried to intervene. "How about we get the first dance started? Could the newlyweds please come to the dance floor?" Vanessa handed over the microphone with a final flourish. "Anyway, we all know who got the good genes in that family." "Sorry, Samantha." As the crowd's attention shifted to the dance preparations, I felt a small hand on my arm. Noah was looking at me with a mixture of confusion and determination. "Mom, can I go to the bathroom?" he asked quietly. "Yes, of course," I replied automatically, barely processing his words through my haze of humiliation. "It's just past the dessert table." He nodded solemnly and slipped away. I sat there, trying to compose myself, considering whether to follow him and just keep walking out of the venue altogether. But before I could decide, the DJ announced the first dance, and the lights dimmed as Jeffrey and Vanessa took the floor. I watched through blurring eyes as they began to sway to a romantic ballad. Vanessa was whispering something in Jeffrey's ear, making him smile. My brother, who had sat silently through my public evisceration, now looked completely content in his bubble of newlywed bliss. And then, something unexpected happened. As the song reached its chorus, there was movement on the small stage where the DJ was set up. Noah had somehow climbed up beside him and was reaching for the second microphone. The DJ, distracted, didn't notice until Noah had already switched it on. "Excuse me." My son's clear voice rang out through the ballroom speakers. "Excuse me, everyone." The music continued, but all heads turned toward the stage. Vanessa and Jeffrey stopped dancing, looking up in confusion. "I know something about the bride," Noah continued, his voice steady despite being the center of attention for hundreds of adults. An absolute hush fell over the room. The DJ, flustered, cut the music mid-song, leaving Noah's voice as the only sound. I half rose from my seat, unsure whether to rush to him or let him speak. Something in his determined little face made me pause. 3 weeks ago," Noah said clearly, "when Mom took me to the Green Hills Mall to buy Uncle Jeff's wedding present, I saw Aunt Vanessa. She didn't see me because I was in the toy store while Mom was next door buying a picture frame." Oh God, what had he seen? I hadn't let Noah out of my sight. He must have spotted something through the store window that connected to the main concourse. Aunt Vanessa was with a man who wasn't Uncle Jeffrey, Noah continued innocently. They were next to the fountain, and they were kissing. Not just a quick kiss, but the kind that's in movies where people hold on to each other really tight. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Vanessa's face went sheet white. Jeffrey stood motionless beside her, his expression unreadable. The man had dark hair and a little beard, and he was wearing a blue jacket with patches on the elbows. He gave Aunt Vanessa a key and said, "Can't wait for next weekend." And Aunt Vanessa said it would be their special place, just for them. I recognized the description immediately. Marcus, Vanessa's ex-boyfriend from college. She had shown me a photo once, saying they'd remained good friends. "I didn't tell anyone," Noah finished, his innocent eyes scanning the crowd. "Because grown-ups said it's rude to interrupt. But the bride interrupted my mom, so I thought it was okay now. For a moment, the entire reception hall was suspended in shocked silence. Then several things happened at once. Vanessa let out a shriek of denial. That's a lie. That little brat is making it up. Jeffrey turned to her, his face hardening with suspicion. Marcus, you were with Marcus 3 weeks ago. Vanessa's father stood up, his face purple with rage. Get that child off the stage immediately. This is slander. And my mother, Diana, who had laughed at my humiliation just minutes before, now looked between Vanessa and Noah with dawning horror. As for me, I finally broke free of my paralysis and rushed toward the stage, not to silence Noah, but to protect him from the chaos erupting around us. As I reached the stage, Noah looked down at me with earnest eyes. Did I say something wrong, Mom? The raw innocence of his question pierced through the chaos. I extended my arms, and he climbed down into them, his small body warm against mine as I held him close. You told the truth, honey, I whispered, even as Vanessa's continued denials echoed through the ballroom. That child is disturbed. He needs professional help, she was shouting, her perfect makeup now streaked with tears of rage. Jeffrey, you can't possibly believe this nonsense. But Jeffrey's face told a different story. The initial shock had given way to something harder, more calculating, the expression he wore in the courtroom when examining a hostile witness. 3 weeks ago was the weekend you said you had that spa retreat with your mother, he said quietly, his words somehow carrying despite the growing murmurs. It was a spa weekend? Vanessa insisted, looking to her mother for backup. Vanessa's mother nodded vigorously. Absolutely. We were at Lauberge the entire weekend. Jeffrey pulled out his phone, his fingers moving quickly. Funny, because you posted photos from that weekend, tagged at Lauberge. But when I called to book us a couple's massage last week, they said they were closed for renovations all last month. The color drained from both women's faces. By now, Noah and I had made our way to a quiet corner away from the drama. He leaned against me, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. Why is Aunt Vanessa so mad that I saw her friend? He asked, genuinely confused. Because that man wasn't just a friend, I tried to explain gently. And she wasn't supposed to be kissing him when she was going to marry Uncle Jeffrey. Noah's brow furrowed. So, she was being sneaky, like when Tommy in my class takes extra cookies and lies about it. Something like that, I agreed, but much more serious. Back at the head table, Vanessa's defense was crumbling. Her father had taken over, trying to control the situation with the same authoritative tone he probably used in board meetings. This is ridiculous. We're not going to let a child's imagination ruin this beautiful day. Everyone, please return to your seats. DJ, music please. But it was too late. The carefully orchestrated wedding reception had descended into clusters of whispering guests, many already gathering their belongings, sensing that the celebration was effectively over. And then, unexpectedly, another voice joined the fray. Connor, Jeffrey's best friend and best man, stood up from his seat. Jeff, he said, his voice tight with evident discomfort. I need to tell you something. I saw Vanessa with a man matching that description about a month ago coming out of the Park View apartments on 7th Street. I wasn't sure what to think, and I didn't want to ruin things before the wedding without being certain. The Park View, Jeffrey repeated, his voice hollow. Isn't that where Marcus lives now? The look of pure hatred Vanessa shot toward Connor would have withered a lesser man, but he stood his ground, loyalty to his friend finally outweighing his reluctance to get involved. You too, Vanessa hissed. You're all trying to sabotage me. This is insane. But her protests were growing desperate, and even her parents looked less convinced of her innocence. Jeffrey turned to her, his voice low but intense. Was Noah telling the truth, Vanessa? Were you with Marcus 3 weeks ago? For a moment, it seemed like she might continue denying everything. Then, perhaps calculating that a partial confession would be better than complete exposure, her strategy shifted. It was just a goodbye meeting, she said, her voice softening to the persuasive tone that had probably worked on Jeffrey many times before. Marcus and I have history, you know that. He wanted closure before I got married, and I thought it would be the mature thing to give him that. By kissing him? By taking a key to what sounds like a private meeting place. Jeffrey pressed. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Vanessa insisted, reaching for Jeffrey's hand, which he pulled away. It was nothing. Just a moment of nostalgia that meant nothing compared to what we have. From our corner, I watched my brother's face as he processed her words, searched her eyes. I had known Jeffrey my entire life, had seen him think through problems, weigh evidence, make decisions. I recognized the exact moment when something fundamental shifted in his perception. "Your bag," he said suddenly. "What?" Vanessa looked confused. "Your purse. Give me your purse." "Jeffrey, this is absurd. Give me the purse." Each word was clipped, decisive. After a moment of tense standoff, Vanessa reluctantly handed over her small satin clutch. Jeffrey opened it and methodically removed its contents: lipstick, a compact, a slim wallet, tissues, and finally, a single key on a plain ring. He held it up. "This isn't a key to our condo, or your parents' house, or any place I know about." Vanessa snatched it back. "It's just a spare key to my office." "Your office uses card access," Jeffrey replied flatly. "No physical keys." The reception hall had gone completely silent again. Hundreds of guests watched this marital implosion in real time. Noah tugged at my hand. "Can we go home now?" he whispered. "I don't like this party anymore." I nodded, gathering our things. Whatever happened next between Jeffrey and Vanessa wasn't something Noah needed to witness. We had started moving quietly toward the exit when Jeffrey's voice rang out. "Samantha, wait!" I turned, surprised to hear my name. Jeffrey was walking toward us, leaving a tearful Vanessa behind with her increasingly agitated parents. When he reached us, he knelt down to Noah's eye level. "Thank you for telling the truth," he said solemnly. "That was a very brave thing to do." Noah nodded seriously. "Mom says lying makes things worse, even when the truth is hard." Jeffrey looked up at me then, truly looked at me, for the first time in months. I saw recognition in his eyes, of the sister he'd grown up with, the values we'd shared, the bond that had been temporarily overshadowed, but not broken. "She's right," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have remembered that myself." He stood up, facing me now. "I'm sorry, Sam, for everything. For not seeing what was happening, for letting you be treated this way." Before I could respond, Vanessa's father appeared behind Jeffrey, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. "This is outrageous," he growled. "We've invested over $100,000 in this wedding, and you're going to let it be derailed by the imagination of a child? Get back to your bride, finish this reception, and we'll sort out any misunderstandings privately." Jeffrey turned to him slowly. "With all due respect, sir, I believe we're well beyond misunderstandings at this point." "Do you have any idea what you're throwing away?" the older man demanded. "Not just Vanessa, but your future with our firm. Connections that could make your career." Jeffrey's smile was sad but determined. "I'm beginning to see exactly what I'd be giving up and what I've already risked losing that's far more valuable." He turned back to me. "Take Noah home. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise." As Noah and I finally made our exit, the sounds of continued argument faded behind us. In the quiet of the hotel lobby, Noah looked up at me with tired eyes. "Did I do something wrong, Mom?" he asked again, uncertainty in his voice. I knelt down and wrapped him in the tightest hug. "No, sweetheart. You did something very brave and honest. Sometimes grown-ups forget how important truth is, and it takes someone with a pure heart to remind us." He seemed satisfied, leaning his head against my shoulder as we waited for our car. Behind us, the elegant wedding that had become a battlefield receded, and ahead lay the quiet sanctuary of our modest apartment, a home built on love and honesty rather than appearances and deception. The drive home was quiet. Noah fell asleep almost immediately in the back seat of our rented limousine. I sat beside him, gently stroking his hair, my mind replaying the evening's events in an endless loop, the humiliation, the shock, the unexpected vindication. It was too much to process all at once. When we arrived home, I carefully carried Noah to his bed, removing only his shoes and tie before tucking him in. He stirred briefly, mumbling something about Uncle Jeffrey before drifting back to sleep. I stood watching him for a long moment, marveling at his intuitive sense of right and wrong, his courage in the face of adult complications. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me," I whispered, though he couldn't hear. Sleep eluded me that night. I sat in our small living room with a cup of tea, alternately reliving painful moments and wondering what was happening back at the reception. Had Jeffrey and Vanessa somehow reconciled? Had her family's influence prevailed? I checked my phone repeatedly, but there were no calls or messages. Around 2 a.m., I was startled by a knock at the door. Cautiously peering through the peephole, I was shocked to see Jeffrey standing there, still in his wedding tuxedo, though the bow tie was undone and hanging loose. "Can I come in?" he asked when I opened the door. His voice was hoarse, his eyes red-rimmed from what might have been tears or exhaustion, or both. I stepped aside, letting him enter the apartment he'd once visited regularly but hadn't set foot in for months. He stood awkwardly in the center of the living room, looking around as if seeing it for the first time. "Noah's asleep," I said quietly. "Do you want some tea, or something stronger?" "Tea is fine," he replied, sinking onto the couch. "Though I probably need the stronger option." I busied myself in the kitchen, giving him a moment to collect himself. When I returned with 2 mugs, he accepted one gratefully, cradling it between his hands. "So," I ventured after a moment of silence, "what happened after we left?" Jeffrey took a long sip before answering. "Chaos. Complete chaos. Vanessa had a full meltdown, alternating between denial, accusations, and eventually a partial confession. When Connor and 2 other friends admitted they'd seen her with Marcus on separate occasions, she just broke. "I'm so sorry," I said and meant it. Despite everything, no one deserves to discover such betrayal on what should be the happiest day of their life. Her father threatened to sue Noah for defamation, Jeffrey continued, a flash of anger crossing his face. "Can you believe that? Threatening to sue an 8-year-old child for telling the truth. He was just trying to protect her," I said, though I felt no sympathy for either of them. I told him if he so much as looked in Noah's direction, I'd countersue for fraud and emotional distress, and make sure every society column in the city got the full story. Jeffrey's jaw tightened. That shut him up pretty quickly. And Vanessa, she eventually admitted she'd been seeing Marcus off and on throughout our entire relationship. The key was to a condo he bought specifically for their meetings. Apparently, our engagement accelerated their timeline. She was planning to go through with the wedding for appearances and financial security while maintaining her relationship with him on the side. The calculated nature of the deception was breathtaking. Why even pursue you in the first place then? According to what she finally shouted at me before storming out, he explained, a bitter laugh escaping him. Marcus doesn't have a social standing or financial prospects to satisfy her parents. I was the respectable face, the appropriate husband for public consumption, while he was the passion. We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what might have been a lifetime of lies and betrayal had Noah not inadvertently exposed the truth. "What about Mom and Dad?" I finally asked. Jeffrey's expression darkened. "That's another story entirely. Mom tried to smooth everything over, suggesting we all just move past this unpleasantness and continue with the reception. When I refused, she actually blamed you and Noah for ruining everything. The pain of that betrayal cut deep, though it shouldn't have surprised me after her earlier cruelty. Dad was a bit better," Jeffrey continued. He seemed genuinely shocked by both Vanessa's behavior and Mom's reaction to it. They had a pretty intense argument right there at the head table. I could imagine, thinking of my father's generally quiet acceptance of whatever social script my mother dictated. "I told them both that what they allowed to happen to you tonight was unforgivable," Jeffrey said, his voice growing stronger. "That I was ashamed of them, especially Mom, for joining in Vanessa's attack on you." Tears pricked at my eyes, unexpected emotion welling up at this belated defense. "You didn't have to do that," I said softly. "Yes, I did." Jeffrey set down his mug and leaned forward intently. "Sam, I've been blind. Worse than blind, I've been willfully ignorant. I let Vanessa isolate me from you and Noah because it was easier than confronting the tensions. I ignored red flags because I was flattered by her attention and her family's acceptance." He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it further. "And I let her treat you like you were somehow less than, when the truth is, you're the strongest person I know. Raising Noah on your own, building your business from nothing, never complaining. Even when things were hard, you've shown more character and resilience than Vanessa could imagine." The tears were flowing freely now, years of bottled-up hurt finding release. "I missed you," I admitted. "Noah missed you. We didn't need grand gestures or expensive gifts. We just wanted you in our lives. I know that now, Jeffrey said, his own eyes glistening. And if you'll let me, I want to find my way back to being the brother and uncle you both deserve. We talked until dawn, excavating months of misunderstandings and hurts, beginning the slow process of rebuilding trust. As the first light of morning crept through the windows, Noah padded into the living room in his rumpled suit, eyes widening at the sight of his uncle. "Uncle Jeffrey!" he exclaimed, immediately climbing onto the couch between us. "Did you and Aunt Vanessa fix everything?" Jeffrey exchanged a look with me before answering carefully. "Aunt Vanessa and I aren't going to be married after all, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups discover they've made a mistake, and it's better to fix it right away than to pretend everything's okay." Noah considered this solemnly. "Because of the kissing man at the mall." "Partly because of that," Jeffrey agreed, "but also because I realized some important things about what really matters in life." Noah nodded as if this made perfect sense. Like being nice to people and telling the truth. Jeffrey smiled, genuine warmth replacing the tension that had lined his face all night. "Exactly like that. And speaking of telling the truth, I owe you a huge thank you for being brave enough to do that last night." Noah beamed. Then his expression grew serious again. "Does this mean you can come over and play video games again? Mom's really bad at Mario Kart." Jeffrey laughed, the sound startling after so many hours of intensity. "I would love that, buddy. In fact, I was hoping I could take you both to breakfast this morning. I know this great pancake place. As we prepared to leave for breakfast, I marveled at how differently this day was beginning compared to how yesterday had ended. There would be more difficult conversations ahead, with my parents, with extended family who had witnessed everything. The annulment process would be complicated and painful for Jeffrey. But watching my brother and my son together, their bond already beginning to mend, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for Noah's innocent intervention. It had prevented a far greater disaster. Years of lies, potential heartbreak, and continued estrangement. Sometimes the most devastating moments can lead to the most necessary truths. And sometimes it takes a child's clear vision to show adults what should have been obvious all along. The weeks following the wedding disaster unfolded in ways I never could have predicted. Jeffrey showed up at our door the very next morning with bagels, coffee, and paperwork. He had already contacted his law firm's family division to begin annulment proceedings. The marriage had lasted less than 24 hours. "I don't want a single legal tie to Vanessa or her family," he explained as Noah happily devoured a chocolate chip bagel at the kitchen table. Their threats to sue Noah were the last straw. Despite Vanessa's father's blustering, no lawsuit materialized. As Jeffrey put it, they realized how catastrophically bad it would look to sue a child for telling the truth about their daughter's infidelity. Instead, Vanessa and her family quietly retreated to their summer home in Maine, issuing a brief statement about irreconcilable differences that emerged after the ceremony. The society pages tactfully avoided mentioning Noah's revelation, though the gossip circuit certainly didn't. The more difficult reconciliation was with our parents. My mom called repeatedly that first week, leaving messages that evolved from demanding explanations to expressing concern, to finally tearfully requesting a chance to apologize. Dad came alone first, sitting awkwardly in my living room, his hands clasped between his knees. "I failed you both," he said simply, looking between Jeffrey and me. "I let your mother's social ambitions override basic decency and family loyalty. I should have spoken up long before the wedding. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen my father, and it opened the door to a cautious family meeting the following Sunday. My mother, stripped of her usual perfect composure, broke down completely when faced with both of her children and her grandson. "I don't know who I've become," she sobbed. "When I heard myself laughing at Vanessa's cruel words about you, Samantha, it was like listening to a stranger. A horrible, shallow stranger. Her remorse seemed genuine, though I knew it would take more than tears to rebuild the trust that had been broken." Noah, with his remarkable capacity for forgiveness, was the first to approach his grandmother, offering her his hand as she cried. "It's okay, Grandma," he said solemnly. "Mom says everyone makes mistakes sometimes." His simple compassion broke something open in all of us, creating space for the difficult conversations that needed to follow. Jeffrey suggested family therapy, and surprisingly, our parents agreed without hesitation. Dr. Elaine Winters, a family systems therapist with a warm office and a no-nonsense approach, guided us through weekly sessions that gradually unearthed decades of dysfunctional patterns. "Diana," she said during one particularly intense session, "your fixation on social status seems to stem from your own mother's conditional love. And Harold, your avoidance of conflict reinforces Diana's control." Meanwhile, Samantha and Jeffrey were cast in rigid roles, golden boy and disappointing daughter, that limited both of them. It was painful work, excavating these old wounds, but necessary. Through those sessions, I finally verbalized how deeply it had hurt to be considered the family's lesser light, how my choices, including my determination to raise Noah alone rather than stay in a toxic marriage, had been consistently undervalued. "I never wanted your pity," I told my parents. "I wanted your respect." The therapy helped, but what really transformed our family was the day-to-day rebuilding of relationships. Jeffrey became a regular fixture in our lives again, showing up for Sunday dinners, Noah's soccer games, and ordinary weeknight visits. He brought ice cream when Noah had a difficult day, helped me repaint the living room when a client canceled, and slowly earned back his place in our inner circle. Noah bloomed under his uncle's renewed attention. The two of them developed Saturday morning rituals: pancakes, followed by children's coding class at the library, then an afternoon of building elaborate Lego structures or exploring local parks. I watched their bond strengthen and felt a healing in my own heart. This was the family connection I had feared was lost forever. 3 months after the wedding that wasn't, another unexpected development occurred. Connor, Jeffrey's best friend, who had finally spoken up about seeing Vanessa with Marcus, asked me to coffee. What I thought was a casual catch-up turned into a slightly nervous confession. "I've always thought you were amazing," he admitted, stirring his latte with excessive focus. "The way you've built your life on your own terms, how great you are with Noah. But with Jeffrey dating Vanessa, it felt complicated." I was surprised but touched by his honesty. Connor had always been kind, if somewhat reserved around me. We began dating cautiously, both aware of the potential complications. But his steady presence, his genuine interest in Noah, and his unwavering support of my work created a foundation of trust that grew stronger with each passing month. By Thanksgiving, our family gathering looked dramatically different from the previous year. Instead of strained politeness, there was genuine warmth around my parents' dining table. My mom had thrown herself into cooking rather than presentation, creating dishes she remembered Jeffrey and I loving as children. My dad engaged Noah in a lengthy conversation about his science project, showing real interest rather than perfunctory attention. Jeffrey brought Andrea, a children's librarian he'd met at one of Noah's coding classes. She was everything Vanessa wasn't: warm, unpretentious, genuinely interested in others. The way she drew Noah out about his favorite books, listened intently to my mother's stories, and teased Jeffrey about his terrible cooking showed an emotional intelligence that fit perfectly into our healing family. Connor's hand found mine under the table as we watched this new configuration of relationships unfold. "Your family's come a long way," he murmured. "We had a good wake-up call," I replied, thinking of that devastating wedding reception that had ultimately freed us all from destructive patterns. My interior design business thrived unexpectedly in the aftermath of the wedding drama. Several guests who had witnessed my dignity in the face of Vanessa's cruelty sought me out for projects, impressed by both my restraint and Noah's courage. Jeffrey connected me with several of his colleagues who needed home offices redesigned, and soon I had enough work to hire an assistant. 6 months after the wedding, Noah received a Courage and Honesty award at his school's Character Education Assembly. As he accepted the certificate, his teacher mentioned how he had stood up for a classmate who was being bullied, even when it wasn't the popular choice. "Where did you learn to be so brave?" I asked him later that evening. He considered the question with his characteristic seriousness. "I think I learned it from you, Mom. You always tell the truth, even when it's hard. Like when you told me why Dad doesn't visit, or when you explain why we can't buy expensive things sometimes." His insight brought tears to my eyes. All the struggles, all the moments of doubt about whether I was doing right by him as a single parent, and here he was, absorbing the values I most wanted to instill. A year to the day after the wedding disaster, we held a different kind of family celebration: Noah's 9th birthday party. It was a simple backyard gathering with streamers, a homemade cake, and a small group of his closest friends. My parents were there, Harold manning the grill, while Diana organized party games with unexpected enthusiasm. Jeffrey and Andrea brought an elaborate Lego set that made Noah's eyes widen in disbelief. Connor stood beside me, his arm around my waist, as we watched Noah attempt to blow out all 9 candles in one breath. "Make a wish!" everyone called as he took a deep breath. Looking around at the gathered faces, family that had been broken and mended, new relationships that had bloomed from the ashes of old ones, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the painful truths that had set us all free. Vanessa's cruelty and betrayal had ultimately been the catalyst for authentic healing and growth. As Noah blew out the candles, surrounded by the family that had finally learned to truly see and value us both, I realized that sometimes our greatest wounds lead to our most profound healing if we're brave enough to face the truth they reveal. Have you ever experienced a moment when an uncomfortable truth ultimately saved you from something much, much worse? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of unexpected vindication resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps me share more real stories of strength, betrayal, and unexpected redemption. Because in the end, being a sad little single mom turned out to be the bravest title I've ever worn. Thanks for listening.